for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we stay on this topic. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has warned that countries like Brazil, China, and India could face severe secondary sanctions if they continue doing business with Russia. The warning comes after U.S. President Donald Trump announced new weapons for Ukraine and threatened 100% tariffs on buyers of Russian exports unless a peace deal is reached within 50 days. Let's listen in to his comments.
With that sanctions bill saying, listen, if you are the president of China or the prime minister of India or the president of Brazil and you are still trading with the Russians and getting the oil and the gas in and you sometimes even resell it for a higher price, know that if this guy in Moscow doesn't get serious about peace talks, I will slam secondary sanctions on you of 100%. So I'm sure they don't know yet what hit them. This will take some time to sink in, and I think you guys making this clear in the media, the senators maybe also discussing this with their counterparts in Brazil, India, China, would be very helpful to put maximum pressure on Russia in addition to the weapons delivery into Ukraine.
Now we go back to our discussion with Professor Stefan Nagy. Thank you, Professor, for staying with us. Now, what are the geopolitical implications of NATO's warning to countries like Brazil, China, as well as India about potential secondary sanctions for continuing business with Russia?
Well, I think actually ultimately it's unrealistic to ask Brazil, India, or China to cease their engagements with Russia. Russia provides cheap energy for different reasons. They have long-standing relationships. And I think that each case that you've mentioned has different interests in maintaining their relationship with Russia. Since Russia invaded Ukraine, China has enjoyed cheap energy imports from Russia. They see that moving away from that relationship would put them in a very difficult position vis-a-vis their real competitor, the United States. India has a long-standing relations with Russia, with the former Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union supported India through much of its non-alignment movement history, and by providing arms, providing energy. They're reticent to throw away a friend that provided that kind of support. And again, Brazil requires cheap energy to keep its economy going. So each state has different reasons for maintaining this relationship, and that's not going to change. What these kinds of threats or demands actually do is I think that they push these countries in the corner, and it forces them to make not the choice that NATO and other members would like, but other choices to work together to push back against these kinds of threats. And that, in that sense, they're counterproductive, and they're not engaged in the actual challenges of stopping Russia from its war on Ukraine.
And in the context of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, what challenges do these sanctions pose to global diplomacy and efforts to achieve a peace deal within the ambitious 50-day timeline?
Well, if you remember, Mr. Trump, President Trump said he'd end the war in one day, and I think that was about as realistic as the 50-day extension that has been placed on Russia by again, trying to cajole or push countries, whether it's China, India, or others, into a corner where they cut off their relationship with Russia is extremely unrealistic, and they're not going to do it. They have interest in Russia because they have interest in Russia and its international interests. Can we find off-ramps in terms of diplomacy and moving forward? Well, this requires work coming together, having these diplomatic discussions behind closed doors, and making those hard compromises on all sides. Is that realistic? I don't think so at this particular stage. India is continuing to invest in a multipolar world and multi-alignment. China is very concerned about its strategic competition with the United States and what it would mean if the United States could concentrate all its resources just on China rather than China and Russia. And those countries in the global south, to be realistic, they require energy, they require food, and they require partners to deal with and advocate for the issues that the global south or these developing countries are focused on, which is development, stability, and getting technology, and working towards recalibrating the international system so it functions better.
Thank you very much, Professor Stefan Nagy, for joining us today and sharing your insight.